Thank you, Justin, and indeed thanks to Mike and the SMMT for giving me the opportunity to come and to speak to you today. I do have a voice, which is great, and also as the chair of the bus coach and minibus section of the SMMT, it's my voice that needs to be heard to try and promote the interests of this sector. And clearly we have a lot of synergies with the car business, but also some unique requirements as well, which is what I'll try and get over to you today. And indeed, we serve a sector of society that perhaps the car industry doesn't necessarily serve. And so it is important that the voice of this sector is heard. It's appropriate that we're here in London, which is the global epicenter of the bus industry. And indeed, that kind of iconic red double-deck bus is an aspirational thing for many cities around the world. And you know, we as a business and as a country benefit from that iconicness, if you like. So first of all, a little bit about us as a business. As I said, you know, we are the world's largest manufacturer of double-deck buses. So many of you may have travelled here in one of those iconic red London double-deck buses, and if so, there's a very good chance that it was built by Alexander Dennis. We're a 128-year-old business, so we are pretty much as old as the car industry itself. And you know, it's incumbent on myself and my colleagues to allow this business to prosper for another 128 years. We're also a very proud British manufacturer. We've got 2 sites here manufacturing in the UK, and we support British jobs both within our own business, but clearly in the wider supply chain. Most of our suppliers are SMEs, so we don't tend to shop at the big tier ones. We do support a lot of smaller businesses in the UK. We are, however, a global business, and we, you know, if you've seen double-deck buses in cities as diverse as Hong Kong or Las Vegas, Berlin or Toronto, again, there's a very good chance that bus was designed here in the UK and built by Alexander Dennis. We introduced our first battery electric bus back in 2016, continuing the theme of today collaboration. We collaborated with BYD, so again, a good theme running through the presentations today to introduce that bus in 2016. And since then, we have delivered over 2,000 battery electric buses to our customers, and we're just about to clock up our 100 millionth mile of EV running. So why is the bus industry important, or the bus coach and minibus sector important? Well, in 2022, there were 2.8 billion individual passenger journeys on buses in England alone. So when you do the maths, that equates to 47 journeys per person per year on average in England, almost one a week. And if you go back to pre-COVID, go back to 2018, for example, that number was 4.4 billion, or 72 journeys per person. And we are starting to see ridership start to approach back towards the pre-COVID levels. So there are good signs within the industry that people are coming back onto buses. Equally importantly, buses and coaches play a really crucial role in the fabric of our society. They take ourselves and our loved ones to school, to work, or on holiday. They're often the only mode of transport for those people that can't drive, and they are there where all else fails, including rail strikes. So, you know, buses, they really do play an important part in the fabric of our society. And also for our elected representatives, buses are also crucial. People are very aware of when the quality or the quantity of their bus service is, and also aware when those quality or quantities drop. This is a global industry, but it does have local implications. The journey to net zero in the UK clearly involves the bus network, and indeed the bus network is leading the way. We've been seeing a mix of EVs of greater than 50% since the start of 2022. So we're you know, more than half of the buses that we build are electric vehicles. And indeed, the optimum national strategy for net zero clearly has to be a mixture of transport solutions. It's appropriate cycle networks through effective bus and rail networks and infrastructure, and of course then up to electrifying the passenger car fleet. Has to be a mixed solution. So what you're seeing on the slide here is the historical bus replacement cycle in the UK. And the size and the ageing profile of the UK bus fleet mandates that about 2,500 to 3,000 buses per year are replaced by the operators operating those buses. A bus has a typical lifespan of around 18 to 20 years, and at the end of the life, of course, they need to be replaced by a new bus. What you can see, however, is this pattern was interrupted from around 2017 onwards as first economic and then Social factors, clearly that being COVID, stymied the abilities of operators around the country to update their fleets. This has resulted in a gap of around 6,000 buses that are overdue for replacement as we stand here and sit here today. And as these are the older EU4 or EU5 models, this has a significant impact of us as an industry to be able to decarbonise. Now, in fairness, policy has been introduced by the government to support operators with the issues of replacing this number of buses with electric vehicles. And again, as we heard from Saul there, the price of an electric vehicle is clearly more expensive than an internal combustion engine vehicle. Ridership is down. The operators are commercial enterprises. Therefore, they have required support from the government to be able to close that cost gap. However, the success of that policy is questionable. A notable former Prime Minister announced in 2020 that by the end of this electoral cycle, 4,000 British-built buses would be on the roads of Britain, funded through the zero-emission bus scheme. The reality is, according to figures released by the DFT last month, of those 4,000, 731 have currently been funded, and of those, 40% have been awarded to overseas manufacturers. So, in the absence of government support, what is the industry doing to help ourselves? Well, one of the keys, clearly, is to recover ridership and allow those operators to become profitable enterprises once again. And we are doing this by collaborating with operators and regional authorities to introduce modern buses that encourage the fare-paying public back onto the fleet. For example, interesting interiors and modern electric buses. As a result, buses are no longer noisy, smelly and uncomfortable places to be. Modern buses are quiet, they're comfortable, they're full of technology, and of course, they're zero emissions. And if you haven't ridden on a zero emission bus recently, then I'd suggest you give it a try. You might like it. But it doesn't stop there. At Alexander Dennis, we are at the forefront of the global study of fully autonomous vehicles, again picking up the question that was raised earlier. And the level 4 autonomous buses that we're currently operating as part of the CAV4 autonomous vehicle service in Edinburgh, and again, Kemi Badenoch referred to it earlier in her speech, they're operating in the most complex operating environment of any level 4 vehicle in the world. A zero-emissions autonomous bus service is a very credible alternative to expensive city light rail or tram network that requires significant investment in city infrastructure. So, what does the UK bus industry require to protect British jobs and continue to deliver outstanding products and services to those people who need it most? Well, we need government policies that deliver on the headlines, not just those that actively encourage local authorities on a race to the bottom of price. A great example of this is the ScotZEB scheme, so the Scottish equivalent of the Westminster policy that I discussed earlier. ScotZEB is structured in such a way that it encourages or even mandates the collaboration between manufacturers, operators both large and small, passenger groups and local authorities to deliver quality and value in a true win-win model. Secondly, we need a national charging infrastructure policy that allows the operators to electrify their depots in a timely manner and simplifies the process. The current process is incredibly expensive, it's complex, it requires the approval and authority of many different external parties and can take several years to complete. We need a new approach to industrial strategy and wider automotive policy, allowing us to exploit more opportunities for sourcing components in the UK, for example, batteries. And in this, our objectives are 100% aligned with the wider automotive industry and as articulated by the SMMT in the manifesto that they've released today. And finally, and again, continuing the theme, we need access to skills. We need to develop the pride, the interest and the skills that will drive the next generation of engineers and professionals in the industry to succeed. I grew up as an engineer in the automotive industry, and it's given me an incredibly rewarding 30-year career. And before Justin says it, no, I know I don't look that old. Similarly, my wife started as an apprentice in a fleet workshop in Ford Motor Company, ironically. And the industry's given her some fantastic opportunities to the point now where she's in a senior position in Jaguar Land Rover. So the industry really can offer huge opportunities and benefits to young people. So I genuinely believe that the UK produces the most talented, the most passionate and innovative engineers in the world, and it's incumbent on all of us in this room, so whether it's manufacturers, policymakers, or trade organisations, to ensure that they've got the same chance that we have to succeed. Many thanks.
Thank you very much, Chris. Hold your position there. Any questions for Chris? I've got a couple that I can think of, but does anyone want to have a burning thing that they want to ask him for? Yeah, someone down at the front here, if we could get a microphone down to the front. There we go. Sure.
Thank you, Chris. The CAV4 project in Edinburgh was launched recently. So how did the public react to an autonomous vehicle?
I would say that the most ringing endorsement of the CAV4 project has been the public have been underwhelmed. And by that I mean the public have got on the bus, they've ridden on the bus. The vehicle is fully autonomous level 4. There is a safety driver that sits behind the wheel but doesn't touch the wheel.
I was going to say there's about 10 drivers on it.
There are two drivers. There's a driver that sits behind the wheel with his hands or her hands, by the way, in a position to grab the steering wheel if necessary. That's a mandate of the regulation. And then there's a second operator on the bus that we call the bus captain. They're there to kind of reassure the public, give them information about how the bus is operating and answer any questions, so really make the public feel at ease. The vehicle operates in completely mixed traffic situations, roundabouts, traffic lights, motorways, lane changes, but basically any traffic circumstance that you can imagine. And as I said, the public have been underwhelmed in the sense that the feedback we found is that I rode on the bus and I was a bit disappointed because I didn't realise it was autonomous, which for me is the most ringing endorsement you could have.
So how scalable is that?
Good question, Justin. We're about to enter the second phase of CAV4, which is when we go into city centres. So clearly, the CAV4 project runs between a park and ride car park on the outskirts of Edinburgh into a transport hub. The second phase, we will extend that route into city centres, so lots of bus stops, pedestrian crossings, all of the other situations that vehicles can undertake. I think that will give us the answer to the scalability within the bus network. Now, one of the advantages buses have is they can run in dedicated bus lanes. So clearly, in terms of, as I mentioned before, replacing light rail or trams in cities, if you've got a dedicated bus lane, which you don't have to rip up the street to deliver, you can scale it up as far as you want.
Yeah, it's interesting about the trams, because, I mean, we were kind of going towards trams and increasing trams, and there are some good examples in Manchester and Croydon and all the rest of it. I just wonder whether this actually if this works out big time, the trams
I think it's got the potential. Anybody who's been to Edinburgh in the last couple of years and has seen the devastation in the city centre caused by literally just taking 6 inches off the road surface to fit some rails in, it's expensive, it's time consuming, it's disruptive. With an autonomous bus running in a dedicated bus lane, you don't need any of that infrastructure.
Chris, huge thanks to you. Thank you.